Thank you, Kathy, Mary, and the entire Ad Club team here today. We can't thank you enough for all the work you're doing, not only for CMO Speaker Series, but also just for the Boston business community and advertising community in general. Welcome to all of you here. As you may know, we're sold out. Excited to have Liberty Mutual here, and especially Emily Fink. And I am pleased to mention that Emily is not only here today, but a few words about Emily. First of all, as CMO, she's responsible for the development and execution of the Liberty Mutual marketing strategy. She's responsible for building the Liberty Mutual brand, driving profitable growth, increasing retention, and piloting innovative new products and services. Emily has held 4 marketing roles in her time at Liberty Mutual since she joined back in 2013, most recently as Vice President of Digital and Direct Marketing. And over the course of Emily's career, she's made significant contributions to Liberty Mutual, including building the social, digital, and direct marketing capabilities. She deployed CARE, a customized CRM program for customer communication. And most recently, she's launched the Liberty Mutual spokes duo of Limu and Doug, the new brand tagline, "Only pay for what you need," and of course, the jingle. Now, it's still relatively early. We're all a little bit maybe not with it, right? We want to wake up. So what I want to do is a very quick call and response exercise. I'm going to sing the jingle, and then we're going to sing the jingle. As painful as that might be to hear me sing. Are you ready? Liberty, 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 liberty. Everyone? Liberty, liberty, liberty. All right, one more time. Everybody. Liberty, 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 liberty. By the way, my kids are 7 and 12, and they sing that all around the house. It sticks. It sticks. So prior to joining Liberty Mutual, Emily has held marketing and leadership roles at Colgate Palmolive and Pfizer. She's advised startup companies in marketing strategy and guest lectured at the Columbia Business School in both marketing strategy and innovation. Her work has been widely recognized by publications such as Ad Age, Adweek, USA Today, Fox Business, Fortune, and Forbes, and has won dozens of marketing awards, including the prestigious Cannes Lion. One quick story, I was talking to Gia as I walked in, and as I mentioned, we're sold out. And the minute Emily hit Fox Business and Cheddar, the ticket sales for this event literally went through the roof. So clearly what you're doing, Emily and Jenna and the entire team, is working tremendously. As a partner of Liberty Mutual for the last 6 years and working with Emily, I have to say it's my distinct honor to welcome you to the stage. So please welcome Emily.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming this morning, and thank you, Glenn and Kathy, for the warm welcome. Do you all know who this is behind me? This is Limu, Emu, and Doug, the new spokespeople for Liberty Mutual Insurance. And you might wonder, how is it that a 100-year-old insurance company, long known for being conservative, being very serious, being kind of humble and quiet with their marketing techniques, came to have these guys as their spokespeople? And that's the story I'm going to tell you today. But I wanted to start at the beginning, and I was going to start with my beginning about how I joined Liberty Mutual 6 years ago and why that came to be. And the answer to that question would really depend on who was asking. So if you were the press, or if it were a job interview, I would tell you that I started my career in brand management, and at that time, that was where everybody in marketing wanted to be. Everybody thought being a brand manager is like being a general manager. You manage a P&L, you do the 4 Ps, you decide what you're going to make, where you're going to make it, how much, how it should be priced, where it should be sold, how it should be advertised and promoted. It was very holistic, and it was considered the best training you could have. But 5 to 10 years ago, that really started to change. And in the marketing space, everyone was talking about customer data, CRMs, ad tech, martech, digital marketing, social marketing, insourcing, data and analytics. And that really wasn't the bread and butter of packaged goods. That was more what you would learn if you were in retail or financial services. And so I decided to make a move to really round out my skill set in the marketing space. So that's what I would say if you were the press or it was a job interview. But if I were telling you the real story, I would tell you something very different, which was at the end of 2012, I was living in Manhattan. I worked in Midtown at Colgate Palmolive in global marketing. And in the 4 years prior, I had had 3 kids. So I'm working in Midtown. Nobody else was doing the kind of job I was doing. I worked in global marketing, so most of the countries that I worked with were the BRIC countries. That was where the growth is. And I was doing early morning calls, late night calls. It was very, very long hours, very heavy travel, and it was just not a sustainable life. Having 2 kids in diapers, 1 still breastfeeding, it was just not happening. And so in a totally out of character move, I quit my job, and we actually moved here back to Boston, to where I'm from, moved home. So technically I'm from Rhode Island, but I consider Boston home. Rhode Island, yeah. You'll actually hear some regionalisms and a little bit of the accent sneak in if I'm not careful. You'll hear a little bit. This is where I'm from, so decided to pack up and come home. And I did. I had no job when I got here. I did the circuit of interviewing with the big companies, and I got a job offer from Liberty, being the head of social media. Now, the end of 2012, early 2013, Facebook and Twitter were just starting to build out their ad products. And so because Liberty Mutual was a large spender, really the largest advertising spender in the area, it was a great opportunity for us to actually partner with Facebook and Twitter at building out their ad products. So it seemed like it was going to be a good opportunity to learn. Now, candidly, at the time, I didn't think I would be at Liberty very long. But I thought it's better to look from a position of strength in the area, having a job rather than have a gap on my resume looking like I wasn't working for a while. So I said, why don't I take this and I'll see how it goes. But my expectation was that insurance was going to be, this says interesting, it was not interesting. My expectation was it was going to be really dull because the products are invisible, they're complicated, nobody wants to buy them, and for sure, nobody wants to have to use them. So I didn't think that that was the makings of a really interesting job. But what I found out was I was actually quite wrong. So I'm going to tell you a couple of dynamics in the category that actually make it a really interesting intellectual challenge. So first, this is a chart from J.D. Power on close drivers, meaning when someone shops an insurance company, what will actually make them buy? And you can see the number 1, competitive price. Number 2 is coverage, but generally speaking, most people think all of the large insurance companies have pretty similar coverage. They think it's all the same, it's commoditized, and so they're buying whatever is the lowest price of the companies that they're shopping. So how do you get someone to shop you? Business is driven in the category by something called unaided awareness, meaning if you ask a consumer, name an insurance company, can they name you on an unprompted basis? And if they can, they're more likely to shop you. So you can see here, quote rate is directly correlated with unaided awareness. Now, this is actually interesting because it's different than what you would see in other categories. In other categories, there tends to be a disconnect between just because you know something doesn't necessarily mean you want to buy it. So think about cars. You might know Kia or Mercedes, but that doesn't mean that's the car you actually want to shop. Or food, you might know McDonald's or Chipotle, but that doesn't necessarily mean you want to eat there. Or even in politics, you might know Elizabeth Warren or Donald Trump. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you're going to vote for. But in insurance, the more likely people are to know you and think of you top of mind, the more likely they are to shop you. Unusual dynamic in the category. How do you drive unaided awareness? Well, you have to have good ads. But to be honest, most of the big advertisers in the category have pretty good ads. So the main driver really is media spend. And you can see the more people are spending in the category, the higher their unaided awareness is. So you see the Geicos, the Progressives, the State Farms, and the Allstates, they have the highest awareness, and they're also the highest spenders. And that's why you can play a little game with me. You can probably recite all of their taglines in your sleep. So try this. You're in good hands with 15 minutes can save you
15% or more.
We are
Farmers.
Yeah. And for our friends in Arnold, now that's
Progressive.
yeah. So, I mean, when you're spending hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on TV every year, and Geico and Progressive are now close to the billion range. Well, Geico is well over $1 billion, and Progressive is close to the billion range. That's why. So you're hearing the same messages over and over and over again at phenomenally high media weights. It's a very cluttered and crowded category. But, and here's where it starts to get interesting. As funny and loud as the advertising in the category is, at its core, it's really not a funny category. So when you're using insurance, it's because the things that you've worked your entire life for, your biggest purchases, and potentially even your physical being or your family, your friends, something's been hurt or destroyed. So at its nature, it's not actually a humorous category. And very core to the DNA of Liberty has been the fact that people at Liberty do not think insurance is funny. And for years, especially the first few years I was at the company, I remember hearing people being quite deeply offended by the level of humor in the category advertising, because they said, if you get in a horrible car accident, if your house burns down, if you're hurt on the job and can't support your family, if a catastrophe wipes out your community, what's funny about that? And if you look back in our history, you really don't see humor in our advertising. And if you look at our DNA, it's because we believe so much that having comprehensive coverage is important, and that our whole role is to help people come back from catastrophes and crises like this. So as I mentioned, we're over 100 years old as a company. We have a very long history. I'll highlight a couple of events in the company's history that really make us who we are. So founded back in 1912, in 1936, we were actually the first company to launch workman's comp. And that's in part why we're so serious about insurance, because there's nothing less funny than getting hurt on the job and not being able to support your family. For most of our history, the core parts of the company were really product. Those are the people who design the insurance products, and they were very focused on the preferred segment of the market, so higher educated, higher credit, people with more assets, and making sure that they had very, very comprehensive coverage to protect the things that they had worked so hard for. And then also at the core was distribution, our field sales group that would sell these comprehensive, complex products to people in a one-on-one relationship. So that was the core and the hub of the company. Only in the last 20 years did we get into direct marketing, meaning selling through call centers and online at all. We launched our first call center in '97, our first online quoting application in 2007, but it's really only been in the last couple of years that we've started to get serious about building out that part of our business. Most of our history is about one-to-one sales with an individual explaining a very complex and comprehensive insurance product to somebody across the table from them. But the industry is changing. So let me orient you a little to this chart. We at Liberty love charts, graphs, and data. But on our x-axis, we have combined ratio, which basically means how profitable are you. And on the y-axis, we have growth. So you want to be in this kind of top right quadrant where you're very profitable and growing. The circles on here that are teal, those are the businesses that are predominantly direct. So meaning they're selling online and through call centers, and in particular, Geico and Progressive. The large blue circles, those are businesses that are predominantly agent-based. So those are where you've got your exclusive agents out there selling insurance kind of in a one-to-one basis. Liberty is on here in yellow because we are omni-channel, meaning we do direct, but we also have independent and captive agents. So if we took out our agent business and just showed our direct business, we too would be up there with Geico and Progressive, but we would have a much smaller circle. So the takeaway from the slide is the businesses in the direct space are the fastest growing and the most profitable. And the reason for that is, just like in every other category, people are really starting to buy more and more insurance online. So in an environment like what we had for the last 100 years, where most of the products are complex and they're being sold by a field sales force, brand is important, but it's not that important because the reps are out in the field. They're making relationships with local auto dealers, schools, local businesses, local real estate associations. So the brand is a nice cover. It's a nice tailwind, but it's not the be-all and end-all. In the direct space, which is what's growing, the online and call centers, brand is everything, because if people don't know you, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you. They're not going to go online and Google you. So brand takes on a completely different role in that kind of environment. But change isn't easy, and that's really not where we've been. So historically, the decisions were all getting made by product and by distribution, the salespeople. That's who kind of had the loudest voice at the table. Finance really did to some degree too. we had a very long history, very, very well established. We had these fundamental beliefs that I mentioned to you, that insurance isn't funny, that it's not humble as a company and not respectful of the industry to be out there and be loud with your advertising, that you should have kind of quiet, more serious, more conservative and sedate kind of ads. And we also had, the table was full of people, especially in leadership roles, who had been at Liberty most, if not all, of their careers. It's a wonderful place to work. The company takes care of its people. It's a very kind company, which is wonderful. But then what you have is a lot of institutional memory at the table. It's also a very consensus-driven company. Again, when you have people who have worked together for a long time, everybody really respects each other, respects everybody else's opinion. It's wonderful, and it's wonderful to lock arms and bring everyone along. But in this environment, change is very, very hard. But there was clearly an opportunity to make an impact because, you know where the market is going, the conditions are changing, the things that we had done in the past were not going to be the same things that were going to work in the future. So clearly there was an opportunity to do things differently if we wanted to continue to grow. So this is where the brand was when I joined the company in 2013. This chart shows unaided awareness. So these are percent of people that are answering Liberty Mutual or another brand when you ask them, name an insurance company you can think of on an unprompted basis. So if you did that, about 12% of people would say Liberty somewhere in their list, and for 88% of people, we were basically invisible. So here's the situation I walked in on. The brand is unknown. We have an invisible product. Marketing has really no seat at the table at all. I came in having worked for 15 years already in marketing at, as Glenn mentioned, at Pfizer and at Colgate, doing global marketing and new product marketing and brand management. I had clearly a ton of opinions about what we needed to do, but I had no credibility, really no network, and no history. And I knew, though, that only doing something very different than what we had done in the past was actually going to be able to build our future. So let me show you what the ads looked like at the time that I started at the company.
When it's people who do the right thing, they call it being responsible. When it's an insurance company, they call it Liberty Mutual. Responsibility. What's your policy? Liberty Mutual.
So everybody at the company loved these ads. Loved them. They still talk about them all the time, and they are a really fundamental part of our company's DNA. But when we analyze ads to determine what makes them effective in market at actually driving business, we generally look at Nielsen brand memorability, which has two components. One, ad recall. Do people remember the ad? And two, brand linkage. Do they know who it's from? So generally speaking, the ad recall on these actually wasn't bad. People could recall some elements of the ad. But in terms of brand linkage, people had no idea who these ads were from. This was actually a 60-second ad. The logo comes up in the last half a second of the ad, but other than that, you really don't know who it's from. There's no brand cues at all. And then on top of that, people didn't know, even if they knew it came from Liberty Mutual, they had no idea that we sold insurance. They thought we were a mutual fund company. So as much as people liked the ads, they had absolutely no idea who they were from or what we were selling. And so internally, people took a ton of pride. It made them feel good. The ads are about people being responsible and being good people, and everybody really wanted to be associated with that kind of equity, but they were not making the phones ring. So remembering the ad is different than remembering the brand. In 2014, our marketing department started to expand quite a bit. We started to take on a much more analytic approach to the way that we did our marketing, knowing that we were going to need to do something a little bit differently to be successful in the direct space. And that was when we launched the campaign that you've seen on air now, Truth Tellers. This can come up behind me.
You owned your car for 4 years. You named it Brad. You loved Brad. And then you totaled him. You two had been through everything together. 2 boyfriends, 3 jobs. You're like, nothing can replace Brad. Then Liberty Mutual calls. And you break into your happy dance.
If you sign up for Better Car Replacement, we'll pay for a car that's a model year newer with 15,000 fewer miles than your old one. See car insurance in a whole new light. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
So that was the ad in 2014. We had a whole campaign of similar things. And in order to, the insight there, what went into the brief was we need to drive brand linkage, and we need people to know Liberty Mutual, and we need them to know insurance. So I think the agency took that quite literally. There was a Statue of Liberty in the back so that you could make the association to Liberty Mutual, and the person in the foreground basically did nothing but talk about insurance. So clearly the brief was delivered on, and we definitely saw a pretty big improvement in brand linkage. So we did make progress. You can see this is unaided awareness data trended between 2013 and 2018. Liberty Mutual is the yellow line. Other than a tiny uptick for USAA, everybody else actually lost unaided awareness ground during that period. The only one growing was us. So albeit we were coming off a pretty weak base for how much money we were spending, but we were able to make very significant gains with the Truth Teller campaign, driven primarily by driving brand linkage. But our friends at Geico and Progressive were not standing still. They were working pretty hard, and they were seeing a lot of growth. And in large part, that growth was driven by having a really smart position in the market. Going back to what's the number one thing they actually want when they're buying, knowing that that's a good price because they perceive everybody as being kind of comparable and offering their coverage. Progressive and Geico were really onto something in terms of having the right positioning. So Geico was all about price and being easy to do business with. Progressive was all about price and being innovative. And they were really hitting on kind of the core insight in the category about what people wanted when they were purchasing, especially in direct. So when I first took my job, I said, it's incredible. I took my job a little bit less than 2 years ago as CMO. And prior to that, the roles that I had were in social marketing, digital marketing. I was doing a lot of direct mail and email. I really wasn't touching the brand. And when I first got my hands on the brand, I asked myself, in this cluttered and crowded category with this myriad of competitors spending $7 billion a year on TV, why would anybody choose us? And just like there's crickets in the room now, there were crickets in my head. I could hear chirping, and I didn't have a good answer. And that was fairly terrifying in my role as my new role as CMO, kind of as the brand owner. So we went back to the drawing board, and we said, let's do some research, let's do some quantitative, let's do some qualitative. Let's figure out where's the Venn diagram intersection between what it is that people want, what's going to be unique in the category, and what is it that we as a company are uniquely well positioned to deliver on. So went back and talked to consumers. Guess what they told us? Same thing that we saw on the J.D. Power chart. We want good prices and we want good coverage. So okay, here's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, so Geico does the price and the ease. Progressive does the price and the innovation. How about we do the price and the coverage? And because the coverage looks bigger on the graph than the ease or the innovation, we're going to do something better. That was the thought process. Unfortunately, though, when we actually tried that with consumers, they said, that's not very believable. We fundamentally think that there's a trade-off between coverage and price. We think that if you're telling us we're going to get great coverage at a great price, either you're giving us minimum limits and cut rate coverage with loopholes, or the service is going to be really bad, but there's something about it that just doesn't feel true. I'm going to play you a video clip of a consumer's actual words, and you can hear there's a little bit of skepticism about this as a concept. Oops. So.
Seems to me that an insurance company that has that philosophy would have decent customer service. I don't think it would be anything excellent, since its philosophy is low price without compromising quality. So I would think that that's decent customer service. I think that the insurance it would provide would be just enough that would be allowable for the minimum for the state that it represents. And that's pretty much it from what I am getting out of that philosophy.
So we weren't getting a whole lot of enthusiasm for that as a positioning. And we weren't trying to communicate that we were cut rate with bad service. So that didn't quite work out. And before we did more quantitative testing, we actually did some focus groups with consumers to explore, is there any way to combine coverage and price in a way that is going to be compelling? And in one of the focus groups, they said something interesting that we kind of latched onto. They said, in cable, if you think about other industries, in cable, you buy this package, and it's got all these channels in it. Some of them you watch, and some of them you don't. And somebody was kind of banging on the table saying, why do I have to pay for HGTV if I don't watch HGTV? Or why do I have to pay for ESPN if I don't watch it? Why can't I just pay for the channels that I want to watch? I'm happy to pay for what I use, but I don't want to pay for anything I don't use. And we took that same concept of customized coverage in insurance, so you only pay for what you need. And we said to people, is that compelling? And all of a sudden they were like, yeah, that is compelling, because I'm worried about one of two things. Either I think I have too much coverage and I'm paying for stuff I don't want, like in the cable example, or I actually don't have enough coverage, because insurance is super confusing and I actually don't know what's covered and what's not covered, and I'm afraid that I do have loopholes. So the concept of delivering customized coverage, so everything that you need is covered, that's covered, and you're not paying for anything that you don't need, was actually seen as very unique and compelling. So here's just some additional data that our agency had gathered when we gave them the positioning statement. They said, 85% of people actually think they probably have some unwanted coverage. 79% think it's important to actually customize, and 66% believe they're actually going to save a good deal of money if their insurance is customized. And then we said, okay, this is compelling. Consumers were telling us it's unique. Nobody else in the industry really focuses on customized coverage so that you can save money. And then we said, we as a company are actually uniquely well positioned to deliver on customization. We have an incredibly wide breadth of products, so not just traditional home and auto. We have everything from pet to motorcycle to watercraft to umbrella to landlord. We've even launched a whole bunch of new products like tuition insurance. So we have a lot of products. We just had a myriad of different discounts and coverage options. So everything from, if you have a whole bunch of stuff, you can get a multi-policy discount. If you're a very safe driver, you can get a violation-free discount. We've got thousands of those kinds of things. And then we're omni-channel. So if you want to work with an independent agent, an exclusive agent, do things through call centers, do things online, if you want to switch back and forth, we can flex that way too. So we said, all right, I think we've hit on all three. All right, so now we have a positioning, customized coverage, so you only pay for what you need. And in our ads now, at the end of every ad, you'll hear our ramp line, Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you, and then our tagline, only pay for what you need. So then the next thing for us to focus on was brand cues. We needed more brand cues because we wanted to dial up that brand linkage, which in a category where the product is invisible is quite a big challenge. So if you think about like where I came from in packaged goods, you can put up a tube of lipstick or a can of soup or a box of cereal, or if you're in auto, you can put up a car. In insurance, there is nothing to show the product is invisible, so you really need to pack the ads with brand cues, so it's not just a montage of sort of lifestyle imagery and footage. To own your own ad and to get the credit for every second, you really have to pack it with the brand cues. So the next brand cue that we worked on was a jingle. I won't make you sing it because Glenn already did that. But we worked on a jingle, and we looked at hundreds of different versions of the jingle. We eventually tested 13 of them with thousands of consumers. And we looked at things like, is it memorable? Is it singable? Will people know it's from Liberty? You can see we over-indexed on that one. And do people like it? And that was where we got our jingle. And so we took our current campaign that we had, Truth Tellers, the one with the people talking about insurance in front of the Statue of Liberty. At this point, we had just switched agencies. We had just moved to Goodby Silverstein and Partners, who are awesome. We have some of our Goodby colleagues in the audience, really, really great agency to work with. And they were kind of helping us think through some of this new positioning work and our new jingle. And this was their first stab at executing on our current campaign. So we took our old format. We infused a little bit more humor into it, thinking that that could help drive brand memorability. We were certainly not all the way to funny, but it was a little bit more lighthearted than where we had been. And we incorporated that all into our current campaign. So I'll show you, this is where we were about 6 months ago.
As someone in witness protection, I can't tell you anything about myself. But believe me, I'm not your average consumer. That's why I switched to Liberty Mutual. They customized my car insurance so I only pay for what I need. And as a man, or a woman, with very specific needs that I can't tell you about.
Mr. Landry?
Oh no.
Hi, Mr. Landry.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
So the Twittersphere lit up, poking fun at the originality of a jingle where you have your brand 4 times in a row. Some of the funnier ones, actually, we didn't put up here, but there was one I really liked where somebody it was kind of a dialogue that they had made about assuming that our 2 creatives had been out drinking the night before and had forgotten that the jingle was due. And so they kind of did their best to slap something together at the last minute. But despite poking a little bit of fun at having the name 4 times in a row, it was incredibly effective, and the agency did exactly what we asked, which was come up with something that's memorable, that's singable, and kind of gets stuck in your head, and that people know is from Liberty Mutual. And the jingle has been, in addition to Glenn's kids and my kids and kids all over the world kind of picking up on it, there's actually another funny tweet about somebody walking into an elevator where there were a bunch of kindergartners singing the jingle, and they were like, oh my God, this is totally the end of the world. But it's definitely very sticky. And in addition to all of you just singing it, the other day, just on the Today Show, Harry Connick Jr. was hosting, and he was talking about how he can't get it out of his head. And there are a lot of examples of that where it's just sort of made it into popular culture. So definitely doing what we needed it to do. It sparked an immediate lift. Oops, I think I missed one. I don't know, okay.
As someone who
Sparked an immediate lift in unaided awareness. So as I was mentioning, that's the metric that we optimize to. So you could see for a long period before we made these changes, adding the jingle and the new positioning, our unaided awareness was flat. It's incredibly difficult to drive unaided awareness unless you're really increasing spend, which in this period we weren't. Inflation is very high in the category, so even if you are increasing spend a little bit, the inflation is kind of eating that up. It's generally 7 to 9% a year. And as I was showing you on the earlier chart with unaided awareness, everyone else was kind of losing ground. So we had a long period when we were holding steady, and then all of a sudden with the new kind of more humorous tone with the unusual characters, incorporating the new tagline and the jingle, we started to see ourselves really climb almost immediately from an unaided awareness perspective. So the changes that we were making were definitely working. And here we go. This is an article from Ad Age. They actually said the same thing that I said when I first saw the ads, which was, oh my God, these are really weird. But they were weird in a funny, good way that actually drove both ad recall and brand linkage. And these ads actually ended up being, for our new Limu and Doug ads, they haven't been in market long enough to evaluate. But based on everything we've ever had in our company history, these have been the most effective ads that we have data on. And it was a nice example where normally we're chasing down Ad Age, saying, please write about our cool marketing. And in this case, they actually came to us and said, can we please write about your cool marketing? We think the changes that you're making are really smart. We also said it was important to be consistent in delivery. So the last thing that you want to do is tell consumers if they come to you, they're going to get a particular experience and particular value proposition, and then it kind of falls apart when you actually interact with the company. So in addition to building out the customization messaging across all of our marketing, we also work to make sure that the quoting application on lm.com and the experience that people would get in the call centers was using the same language about we customize your coverage so you only pay for what you need. And even
Thank you for holding. At Liberty Mutual, our licensed agents customize your insurance so that you only pay for what you need. Your call is important to us. Please continue to hold, and a licensed agent will be with you momentarily.
not that you would ever hear that, because you would never be on hold. But if you were, then you would hear a very consistent brand message. But all of the reps use that same language as well. And what's been cool is they tell us all these stories about people calling in saying, can you please customize my coverage, because I only want to pay for what I need. People are actually using the same language to approach the reps that they're hearing on TV, and that level of consistency, we think, really helps us to build out the brand. So, okay, where do you go from there? So our current campaign had been made as effective as we thought we were going to make it. We'd seen a ton of progress. But now we thought it was time for the next chapter. How do we take another step change up from where we've been? And we thought about, we added an audio brand cue. That was our new jingle. But what else could we do? So we're an insurance company. We love data. We tried a study where we debranded all of the brand cues in the category. So for tagline, for example, we would say, you're in good hands with blank. Or for character, we might show Flo and take Progressive off of her apron. And we asked people, can you tie this character back to the brand that owns it? And far and away, the most remembered linked brand cues were spokespeople. So we said, okay, let's try a spokesperson. We also did some analysis on what are the different tones and features in the category that can really help drive brand memorability. So we showed people all of the top ads in the category, and we said, rate these ads on how serious they are, how innovative they are, how informative they are, how humorous they are. And then we built a model tying those dimensions back to brand memorability to see what of those dimensions would be the most likely to make someone actually remember the ad. This is what we learned. Two things. One, the most highly correlated attribute with brand memorability was humor. And number two, we were not funny. So, which you could probably guess, because any company that would build a model like this to show that humor is an effective way to get people to remember insurance, so you get a sense of kind of how we're operating. But so we learned being funny can actually make us more memorable. Now, the reason this is important, it's not that wasn't something that was intuitive. Kind of comes back to the situation I was saying that I found when I got to the company, which was I had a lot of opinions. Nobody cared about my opinions. What they cared about was, what does the data say? And if I say we should have a funny ad, and they say, well, we're not funny, that's not in our DNA, it's kind of opinion versus opinion. But when you can actually show data to say, if we have a funny ad, it will be more memorable. If you have an ad that's more memorable, it will drive unaided awareness. If it drives unaided awareness, it actually drives quote rate. And so you can get X% more business from every dollar that you spend by making ads that are funny. All of a sudden, the conversation really changes quite a bit. So we started to explore a bunch of different spokes character directions at this point. We looked at dozens and dozens of different spokes characters. This is a kind of cartooned version of some of the ones that we talked about. And if you're like, I cannot believe that she took a dancing bear, cartoon dinosaur, and supervillain to the CEO of Liberty Mutual, for those of you who know Liberty Mutual well, yes, we did that. Yes, I'm still here. And in the end, we ended up choosing Limu, Emu, and Doug as our spokes duo. And we did a lot of research, as we always do, because we're a very data and analytics-driven company. And what we learned was, looking at those two dimensions that I said were important to us, ad recall and brand linkage, these guys did an awesome job at driving ad recall and brand linkage. So from a recall perspective, they're like a spokes duo that's one part familiar and one part unexpected. So everybody knows the buddy cop duo trope, think Starsky and Hutch, but one of the cops is a wild bird. So familiar and unfamiliar at the same time made it memorable. And then having all the brand cues that we talked about, in addition to branded spokes characters, made it well linked back to Liberty. And we also got just really nice consumer feedback. People thought it was funny. So let me show you some of the ads if you haven't already seen them.
And Doug.
Look, Limu, a civilian buying a new car. Let's go. Limu's right. Liberty Mutual could save you money by customizing your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Oh, yeah, I've been a customer for years.
Huh. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
And Doug.
Exactly. Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Nice. But, what's up with your partner?
Oh, we just spend all day telling everyone how we customize car insurance because no two people are alike, so. Limu gets a little confused when he sees another bird that looks exactly like him. Yeah. He'll figure it out. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
And Doug.
What do all these people have in common, Limu? Exactly. Nothing. They're completely different people. That's why they need customized car insurance from Liberty Mutual. They'll only pay for what they need. Yes, and they could save a ton. You've done it again, Limu. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
So over the course, I just want to come back. This is the last chart I'll show you, but over the course of our history, our recent history, on a general basis, we could get about a point to a point and a half of unaided awareness in any given year. The only time there was an exception to that was in 2014 to 15. We added $100 million to our television spend and launched Truth Teller. So we were coming off a pretty low base of awareness with like ads that didn't have very high brand linkage, going to ads that had a much more considerable brand linkage. Other than that, it's been basically a point to a point and a half a year at the same time that the rest of the category was actually losing ground from an unaided awareness perspective. In the last year, between like January, February of last year to January, February of this year, you can see we went from about 21 to about 28. So that was the biggest jump in unaided awareness we've ever had in our company history and the industry's really ever seen. And so I think our partners at Goodby have really knocked it out of the park, and our own brand team has done a really nice job just breaking apart and thinking about all of the different things that we could do to make our ad spend even more effective. So let me tell you a little bit just in the end about what it is that I learned from this experience, because changing a culture and building a brand and doing something really different wasn't always easy, and I did take away a couple of lessons. One, that you really can't be afraid to challenge long-held beliefs in a company. The beliefs are there for a reason. They're part of the company's DNA for a reason, and they're definitely compelling. But when the circumstances around you change, you have to be willing to challenge, because if you're not, you're going to end up in the same position that you've always been, and you're not putting yourself in a position to grow. Data speaks louder than words. I gave you a lot of examples of that, but opinions don't work when you're challenging long-held beliefs in a culture, because it's one opinion versus another, and the ones with more credibility are the ones that have been around for a longer time. But data can be an incredibly compelling way to change people's minds, and generally speaking, when you put the same facts in front of two different people, generally speaking, they're going to come to the same conclusions. Know who your stakeholders are and who theirs are. That was probably the biggest mistake I made in my first year as CMO. I thought that the CMO makes all the decisions about the brand. In CPG, where I had come from, consumer packaged goods, generally speaking, that's actually true, because a company has a whole portfolio of brands, and the brand manager is deciding how the brand should evolve. In a company where the brand is the company, and everybody in the company is affected by the way that the company is represented outside of its walls, the dynamic is really quite different, and that was a learning for me. And so in order to get us to think about marketing and our brand and our ads in a different way, it was very important for me to understand all of the different stakeholders and what they were thinking and where they were coming from, and bring every one of them along on the journey. Consistent communication is the key to culture change. So when people have felt a certain way for hundreds of years, it's not possible to say something once or twice and get everyone to change their mind. You have to be consistent, and your team has to be consistent in everything that they're communicating. And you're going to have to say it over and over again, and you're going to have to be patient in order to drive change. And if you don't have the fortitude to do that, it's going to be really frustrating really quickly. And then the last thing I'll say is just, the resilience and confidence are the only possible keys to success when you're trying to change a culture. And I'll tell you, if you go onto our company homepage today, our intranet homepage, you'll see a very nice clip of me talking about Limu and Doug on Fox Business. If you go into my inbox, you will see dozens of very kind notes from people across the company saying, I love Limu and Doug. We find your leadership inspiring. We love these changes. This is just what we need. Send me swag. If you had gone to our intranet homepage 5 or 6 months ago, we had just done a blog on how we were evolving our advertising, and we had put up the witness ad that you saw before, and there were hundreds of comments saying, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to the company. We need to go back to those responsibility ads that we had. Someone posted something like, God, we've got the worst marketing department in the world. Can somebody please fire them all? And it had hundreds of likes. And when you are trying to change a culture, not everybody is going to come along right away. And you have to be very resilient, and you have to say, you know what? We have a mission. We have work to do. You enroll your team. You keep everybody focused on the work and on the mission. And you will bring people along eventually, but they're not all going to come along as quickly as you can. And it's so important to just say, you know what? We need to roll up our sleeves and stay focused on the end game and not get distracted by all of the noise, because in the end, it's just noise, and you won't make a change if you get overly caught up in all of that. So that's my last comment here. I just want to thank a couple people in the audience, and then I'll open it up for questions. I have with me 3 of the folks who have been with me on the entire journey today. So Jenna LaBelle, Sean Kelleher, and Dana Block. They were here from the very beginning. Not only did they make the presentation today, they also made the story. And one cool thing I want to tell you about Jenna, she's our VP of Brand at Liberty. The day that the blog post went up with the hundreds of people saying we should all be fired and our ads are awful and all of that, Jenna spent the day community managing that post, telling every person who said something negative why we had made a particular choice and what data we had used to support that choice. And by the end, if you scroll down through the hundreds of comments, you start to see the tenor of the conversation changing, where people say, you know what? I understand why you made that choice. You know what? I guess I just felt this way because we've always done it that way. You know what? My kids are singing the jingle at home. My friends are talking about Liberty Mutual now at the gym. People are calling me in the office saying, I only want to pay for what I need, so I want to switch to Liberty. And she really helped to change the tenor of the dialogue around the company, which was really awesome. I also want to thank my dear friend, Andrea Gross, who's sitting in the front row here. She brought my 3 girls that you saw in the earlier picture, Florence, Daphne, and Eleanor, as well as her 2 daughters, Annalise and Anastasia. Andrea believes that women should stick together, that they should help each other out, and that we should be raising strong, smart daughters. And she really embodies that as a mom. And she takes care of not just her own kids, but often taking care of mine and kind of bringing them to all kinds of STEM activities and girls self-defense, and just does a really awesome job kind of helping our community support women. So thank you. And so with that, I'll open it up for some questions. I think my kids are clapping because they're proud and because it's done. I think that was a long time to sit if you're little.
Good morning, Yvette Byers
Morning.
from Univision. That was a beautiful talk. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
having us today. So as I was briefing my boss on the new campaign, I was talking about Limu and Emu. And she said, why Limu? And I said, truncated Liberty Mutual.
Yeah, there you go.
So I was wondering how many people had the same response that she did, which is, why is it Limu?
I think
do they get it readily?
That's a really good question. I don't think everybody gets it readily. I think it's going to take a little while till we're in. Yeah. That is why we chose it, though.
Hi, I'm Chris Scalisi from Undertone. I know in the past you guys have done a lot of investment around sponsorship of sports and Olympics and things like that. Do you guys see yourself moving away from those kind of bigger sponsorships and kind of concentrating on this message going forward?
Yeah, I think what we're really focused on is how do we drive unaided awareness, because we want to be in people's consideration sets. So what we focus on is looking for opportunities where we're getting really wide-reaching, low CPM opportunities. And the reason for that is we just want to be in front of people all year long at a high media weight, because while there is a little bit of seasonality to insurance, generally speaking, people are buying all year long. And generally speaking, they're going to buy what's top of mind. So I think sponsorships for us, they're a great way to drive engagement or to drive like brand affinity. If you're Mercedes, you might want to sponsor Polo. But for us, just knowing what we're trying to accomplish, we don't really invest as much in sponsorships as another brand trying to build affinity with a particular audience or that really sells a lot in a particular season might.
Great, good morning.
Morning.
Peter Barnett, Promosis, Promotion Marketing. So great corporate culture change story. Can you speak a little bit about your challenges in shifting the minds of the senior stakeholders in the company?
Yeah, it is a good question because people definitely had a lot of different perspectives. I think there were two things happening at once. From an advertising perspective, I think really building out the data to support all of the changes that we wanted to make was the game changer. So being able to say, historically we'd always said we don't do spokespeople. Spokespeople are silly. What happens if they get in a car accident or they're on drugs? That's just not for us. But I think by being able to show the chart that we showed saying the most effective brand cues in the whole category are spokespeople, we really need to do this to drive linkage and get credits for our ad. Those kind of things really helped us, just being able to support with data that we can make our ad dollars much more effective at driving unaided awareness and driving business if we make some of these changes. The other thing that happened at the same time was we have a really exceptional talent and enterprise services, that's what we call HR, officer who was also really pushing for a lot of fundamental changes to the company's culture, being much more open. Our diversity and inclusion office also reports into her. And we have a pretty comprehensive diversity and inclusion effort that's really aimed at making sure everyone's voice around the table is heard and is valued. And even if those are voices that are saying something different and driving to change, that people just take a minute and kind of check themselves and say, why am I reacting this way? Let me make sure I'm being open to this. And some of the changes that she was putting in place also really helped. And there have been everything from going to flexible work arrangements, extending maternity and paternity leave, putting more mother's rooms in, letting people wear jeans to work. Like when I started, we wore blue or gray suits every day. So there were a lot of other cultural changes going on at the same time too. Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much. That was a really insightful presentation. I was curious how much the sales team, if at all, influences or has influenced the marketing strategy, brand strategy, since they're out there every day talking with people.
Yeah, they definitely have a lot of influence because we wouldn't want to be saying anything that wouldn't resonate with the sales force, and whether that's the people who are in the call centers handling customer calls, or whether that's the exclusive agent sales force that's actually out on the street meeting with people. So we got feedback on the positioning, the customized coverage, so you'll only pay for what you need, and the ads from the people in the call centers and the people on the street. Generally, because we never talked about it this way, the idea of customizing your coverage so you only pay for what you need, but really that's what they've always done. We just didn't call it that. So they would have called it consultative selling, where we're really taking the time to understand what are someone's unique needs, how do we give them exactly what they want. We wouldn't want them to overpay. So for example, if they have a 10-year-old car, we're gonna get them only liability insurance. And so really, they've always done it. So I think it rang true to them, but it was just never, we didn't talk about it that way. That's a good question. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Emily Merladar from Verizon Media. My question is around online video strategy. Obviously, you spend a ton of money and effort on TV and all those new videos. Can you talk a little bit about how it transfers over to online video and what that focus is there?
Yeah, for us, online video is obviously a compelling way to reach more consumers, and particularly a compelling way to reach consumers who aren't watching as much TV. So we will be using the same campaign. We use Limu, Emu, and Doug for online video. We also use truth tellers. We have some other video concepts as well. So we definitely continue to advertise and expand in online video. I think that's very important for us moving forward. I actually see us spending more in that space, and kind of rotating around the different aspects of the creative that we have available to do it. I think as we look at where people are actually consuming media, more and more we see people really focusing on streaming, not spending as much time on linear TV. So it's something I see us doing today, but doing more of moving forward.
This is going to be the last question over here.
Yep, thank you.
Good morning, Matt Stutz from Adobe. Curious, you've had unprecedented growth on the unaided awareness. How do you build off and sustain, I guess, what you've already put in place?
Yeah, I think we were one of the only advertisers in the category that had only one campaign in market, given our level of spend. So I think one of the things we're going to do is continue with, we have 2 really strong campaigns, both of which we think have even more legs. So you're going to see us coming out with a lot more creative. We really just tested this truth tellers with the kind of more wacky individual in the foreground. You're going to see more wackiness coming from truth tellers in the future. And then with Limu, Emu, and Doug, they've only been on air for a couple of weeks. So as the characters we're in, I think there's even more opportunity for them to do kind of interesting and wacky things. So in the near term, I think you're going to see more of those. And then moving forward, truth tellers has been on air for a long time. So I think we'll think about what eventually is going to replace that. Good. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to come and hear our story today.